Hi, my name is Anthony Azekwoh and I'm an artist based in Lagos. The first thing I do before creating is, apart from like my daily routine, whether it's like taking a walk or like going to the gym, I think I prefer to dive into it. There's a lot of thinking I'm doing prior and beforehand, whether the day before, like that morning, that's already kind of giving me a head start into what I'm trying to do. But I try not to like overthink it, so I don't have like any rituals or like stuff I do. I just like jump into it. When I sit down to create, the first thing I'm thinking is, damn, like, can I still paint? I mean, like, because again, there's this weird fear of like sitting down and then losing my powers and then like just not being able to paint anymore. But then it's like, as I'm getting into it, because everything I'm doing is so drastically like different from what I did before and so different in skill levels. So it's always that fear of like, damn, like, can I do that? I think there's always that first like thought or anxiety. But then I just continue and then it seems apparently I still have it. I definitely feel like digital art has opened new ways to tell African stories. Like my series, The Wedding, for instance, where you're having like thousands of people being able to go around the world and like participate in this online thing. Like, at that pace, it could really only happen with digital art. If I was painting with oils, I'd have to like have painted them, wait for the paint to dry, like then scan them. Those already like would take like, days or weeks. But with digital, you're able to tap into a kind of speed that you otherwise wouldn't with other mediums. And that's like a blessing and a curse. The conversations I hope my work starts like for people here and abroad is that here I believe that like for me, I started like this whole like career with just my sister's mouse and a cracked version of Photoshop. And since then I've just been around the world like working and like really taking like the gospel of what African arts could be and what my art is. And I feel like for me the message here is that really you can start from small things and like great things can start from like those small beginnings and you definitely should just start. I feel like abroad, like the message is similar in the sense where it's also another dimension of a lot of people that have been away from home for like years or generations have lost touch of like what it means to be like Nigerian or African. And I feel like with my work, I'm hoping that they do feel that connection of back home. This right here is a 3D printed sculpture of Lucifer. So these were two angels, the warring angels that I made. Unfortunately, Michael has lost a wing. But yeah, like these were to me experiments in like, one, when I'm thinking about religion or like spirituality, I'm thinking in very like black terms. I'm thinking of these guys with like afros and like dreads and like cornrows. And so I really wanted to represent the angels that way because that's how I see them. That's what I think of when I'm looking at them. This piece is also another like sculpture. It's of an unnamed collaboration with a chess master that I cannot say, but this is like V1 of something like really cool that we're working on. I was kind of in a space where I was thinking of just what to make. And again, like I do get in those moods where it's like either I finished the show or an exhibition and I'm kind of like angsty. So for me, I really wanted to like tell like those Christian stories that I grew up with, but also from my own lens now. As a Catholic, I grew up with all these like very whitewashed versions of these like, individuals or entities. And they just didn't mesh with my own understanding of like spirituality as I grew up. So for me, like being able to reinterpret those things has also been like a goal of mine, even like with this painting now, The Death of Ikemefuna, being able to kind of bring to life like these stories that we've seen, but also from a perspective that we can understand is a big job for me as an artist. And so for me, it started with like, of course, like sketching first of all, then sculpting on my computer, and with the job of my incredible 3D printer here, bringing them to life. I combine, traditional principles, with digital tools. It's very interesting because definitely as I was learning, like, I was always just a fan of like oil painting and acrylic and it's like traditional medium. But man, I was 16, you get like my parents weren't really too keen on supporting this arts thing that was taking me away from, they thought the chemical engineering routes they wanted me to be on. So this meant that I didn't really have too much support to like buy actual tools. But what I was able to do was still study them, like whether I'm going to galleries or studying paintings online. Through that, I was also able to understand like texture and how texture does appear in photos in real life. And through other artists like Sam Spratt, who are also doing, and Dave Raposa, who are also doing similar things with transposing digital tools to like traditional tools rather to digital tools. For me, it was like, okay, there definitely is a way. All I have to do is like make that. And I think for me, it's a matter of almost cracking the digital software in the sense where it's like you're breaking it and making it less efficient. Because at the end of the day, like art isn't meant to be like the most efficient practice. It's meant to also be the soulful exercise. So, for instance, my Photoshop, I can only like press undo a number of times. And that's like a specific setting I've made, because if you're oil painting, you really can't press undo at all. And when you have that at the back of your mind, knowing that you don't have unlimited undos, it makes each of your strokes intentional. And that's like little things like that, like built into the software I use to help me as much as possible create the most meaningful marks I can make on the canvas. Yeah, for sure. I feel like my first exhibition, we had a lot of like AR and VR activations where you could point your phone and have the artwork itself be explored. With AI, that's something like a bit more on the interesting side. I feel like for like particular tasks, whether it's like expanding decks or such, like those kind of like back-breaking things that you otherwise wouldn't do, I feel like AI is cool for that. But when it comes to the arts and telling stories and being able to pull from a place that's true and honest, I realized that AI doesn't do too well on that. So like, it's kind of relegated to that side. But yeah, I feel like, a lot of artists are scared of being replaced by AI. For me, for instance, it's like, as an artist, what I'm representing on the canvas is not just a pretty picture. I'm representing to me what it looks like and what it feels like to be a Nigerian, what it feels like to be a Nigerian man living in this time, what it feels like to be a person, what it feels like to be an African, what it feels like to be a 25-year-old in the 21st century, like all that angst, that stress and anxiety that comes with all those categories. That's something that AI can't quite replicate, if you get what I mean. It's like, when art is a dialogue and the algorithms can compile and they can like compress and they can amalgamate, but they don't really communicate in the way that we humans do. So yeah, I'm not too stressed about them. The moment where a painting starts becoming sculptural to me is always towards the end. And normally at that point, it's like, damn, like the feeling is so cool because it's like, I'm able to apply like these tiny details and really bring things out. But at the end of the day, it's also at the end of the painting. So it's just very bittersweet moments that last very briefly, because at the same time, I also know you can overwork a painting, you can over detail, and it can lose its essence and its beauty. So yeah, towards the end is when it starts feeling sculptural, but then by that time it's always too late. How I balance technical precision with instinct is honestly, I guess, feeling my way through. A lot of the time you'll get to a point like a painting or a sculpture where it's like anatomically and maybe like aesthetically, I know I'm meant to make decision A, but decision B to me feels like a more human and honest decision. And I almost always at least like pick decision B, because I feel like there's something there. There's something about imperfection or like, imbalance that can also tell like an interesting story. I think the most challenging parts of, translating emotion into digital form is just the limitations already set by the software itself and being able to overcome those. You have the software fighting you back to become sterile, to be more digital, to be clean, to be simple. And you have to fight that and like make it rough, like make it imperfect, like make it feel something. I think that's the big challenge. I think what drew me to Baba Aruba was definitely for the past couple of years, like my practice has been obsessed with, part of my practice rather has been obsessed with like age and how people change and evolve as they do so, there's a lot of changes that happen like physically and like emotionally and I guess like physiologically that have always just been really interesting to me. And, as a younger artist, like for me watching, when you're trying to like draw a face, for instance, as people get older, like the layers of skin on their face, like it starts to like fall flat against the skeleton. And with that, you can kind of like pick out the landmarks a bit easier, so it becomes easier to draw. And it just became like, my own quiet cheat code of like learning how to like draw people's faces, but with that, there also was that interest of, just how people looked and how like the human spirit seemed to like almost like still endure like all through those years. And even as these people were like older, like there was like this quiet wisdom that I always really wanted to portray. The thing that spoke to me personally about the figure energy was like, funny enough, someone mentions me on Twitter like maybe a year or two ago, and he goes, like, bro, you're the guy that made this painting. He's referring to my Red Man painting. He goes, bro, you know I made this painting. I'm like, yeah. He's like, damn, I've seen it in Nigeria. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, man? And it's like, apparently, they had been pirating the painting and selling it around like the Aja like side, and they had given it their own name, Baba Aruba. And I was like, that's kind of insane, And I went there and I saw them and I was like, okay, this is crazy. I actually caught one of them. But then for me, like that name and that title, like always did stick. And so interesting, I was like, I do want to actually make a painting with that title at some point. So that stuck in my head. And, years later when like the painting finally did come out, I was like, okay, this is, I also with the painting was trying to like combine again like digital methods with like an impasto technique. And with that, it was like, that's kind of how that painting was formed. Each time I revisit those themes of like age and youth, in my work, like the things I find myself discovering is just how much we connect to these things, how much like people of different ages can understand and like really find this common ground within them. It's like, different people, sometimes see the paintings and they see like their family members. Sometimes people see the paintings and they see themselves, see their uncles, see their parents. Like it's something really interesting in just like the wide commonality of the whole thing and how like we're all parts of this like one big like memory. I think for me, like with my paintings, I don't think I'm even highlighting things that people overlook. I'm more, enlarging the things that we already know, in terms of just like the memory that these people hold, like the wisdom, like the teachings and the beauty. I feel like the beauty is something I guess like people actually do overlook. The beauty in things that are old and like, almost faded. I feel like there's a beauty in like an individual who's been able to just go through those years. There's a beauty in like objects and things and paintings and sculptures and just like, things that have been able to survive. I think there's beauty in surviving. I feel like for me, like the advice definitely with younger artists is really be patient with the craft and like, the arts. I think unfortunately things did become very hyper financial in the past 5 years. But I think like really sticking to the craft and like knowing what you're doing on a very atomic level to me is like the greatest thing. Like being able to really like sabi work, like to me is important. I think like, that the way like the current stakeholders can support artists like me is just by, I guess, paying attention, like, following the work, interacting with incredible like galleries and spaces like Sokari, who have been able to, I guess, like really put artists down like that fringe side on in terms of just putting us onto new audiences. And I think that to me is really important. So yeah, I think just by interacting and trusting these new systems that are being built to foster the new ecosystem.